Hey everyone, Kyle Mike here from MLive.com, joined by Justin Rogers. We're at Ford Field where the Lions have just lost 42-17 against the Cardinals. That is not a misprint, that's not a misquote. It's this isn't just a loss, this is gut-wrenching. The Lions are in pieces at this point, Justin. They have no answers in any part of the game, particularly on offense. What's your initial reaction? And I'm almost at a loss for words to describe what we just saw.
Listen, we never expected this when the season started, but when it got to 0-2 and you saw the way that team played in Minnesota, we warned you. We warned you that 0-5 was a very real possibility. This team kind of gave you a false glimmer of hope with the way they played in Seattle, but this is who the Lions are. They're a team that loads up a six-shooter before they come into the game, and then just piece by piece they shoot off their foot every bit of the way. You know, it's turnovers, it's penalties, it's blown assignments. This is a bad football team. Maybe it's not the worst football team in the NFL, but it's pretty darn close. Bad football team.
What struck me after the game was the lack of answers or explanations from the Lions. You ask them what's wrong, and they don't have any answers right now.
Or they don't want to say them.
Yeah, but the impression I get is that they really don't know, and it's, you know, what can you guys? They've been saying, especially in offense. Let's take the offense. They've been, it was 21 games now, and they've said we're getting close. We just need patience. We're close. These are quotes we hear literally every single week from Joe Lombardi, and then you see this. It's a 17-point effort, and it's another throwaway touchdown at the end to even make it look like 17 points. Jim Caldwell said after the game that, you know, in talking about Matthew Stafford, that, you know, don't get too down on him. Just last week he played one of his better games for us. Last week the Lions played the Denver Broncos and scored 3 offensive points. 3.
Seattle, but yeah.
Seattle, but yeah, it's, you know, this is a team without answers at this point, and I don't know where they go from here. They're just a bad team, and playing a bad Bears team will help, but this team certainly has its issues.
2 biggest problems on offense. You want me to tell you, Lions fans? I don't think it's really hard. You can't run the football. You cannot run the football. It's another abysmal effort. Zach Zenner, everybody's hero, came in, gave you 30 yards on 10 carries. It's actually pretty good, all things considered. 3 yards per carry is an improvement. 2, Matthew Stafford is an average quarterback. He is nothing more. You can hold on to the 2011 season all you want, the 5,000 yards, 41. It was a great season. It's not coming back. He's average. He can't do it on his own. He's not one of those quarterbacks that can, and without a running game, it makes him look even worse. He gets exposed. His bad decisions become to the forefront. This loss today was largely on Matthew Stafford. Yeah, there was some fumbles too. Abdullah gets some of the blame. Tate gets some of the blame. Stafford's 3 interceptions were awful. Yep. Started off the game. Second pass of the game. Awful.
Yeah, just getting it out of the way. You know, Stafford was benched in the second half at that 3rd turnover. Caldwell had told Stafford at halftime, if you throw one more pick, you're getting benched. First drive, throws a pick, he's benched. But Stafford is still the starter. Just to clear the air on that, he's still the starter for now. Dan Orlovsky's not as talented. Stafford is more talented, but, you know, better. I'm not sure at this point. I really don't know what the solution is for this offense, because it's horrendous. It's terrible. It's dysfunctional, and I'm not sure if this is something that can be fixed.
There are few, if no, solutions right now. You know, Stafford's the horse you're saddled to right now. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. I don't think it's changing this offseason, although some people would like that to become a conversation. There is no young quarterback on this roster. It's Dan Orlovsky. I mean, that's not a sexy backup. It's not. It's not even Kellen Moore. I mean, not like Kellen Moore was ever going to have a serious threat to unseat Matthew Stafford. It's not like they've got a second rounder they've been developing that you know, people are clamoring for a shot. You're talking about the draft as the next point in time where they could really address the quarterback position. And again, I'm going on record. I don't think they do, unless there's a whole new front office that just says, we don't like Stafford.
Which is possible. I'm not sure how likely it is, but it's certainly on the table. And if this thing really goes off the rails, which at this point it is off the rails, if it doesn't go back on the rails, then yeah, fundamental changes could happen with the coaching staff, with the front office. I still think the most likely off-season firing is Joe Lombardi. I think there has to be a shake-up there, because clearly it's not working. And barring a miraculous, you know, 10-win turnaround or something, I think that his seat will be hottest come the off-season. I still do believe at this point Jim Caldwell is safe. But if this team really gets ugly, of course, this is the NFL. It's a win-now league. Jim Caldwell knows it as well as anyone after getting fired in Indianapolis. A terrible season could lead to his dismissal as well. Everything's on the table, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I wonder how much money the Lions are willing to eat. It's unfortunate that's part of the business of the NFL, but they ate some of Schwartz's deal. I believe it was 2 years on his deal. Caldwell's got 2 years left on his deal. You're talking about $6, $7, $8 million just to eat Jim Caldwell's contract to go out and hire another name. And fans aren't going to settle for another Jim Schwartz level hire where you're taking a guy that wants to prove himself. There's enough talent on this organization, and it's tough saying that at 0-5, but there's enough star power on this roster that you have to go out and you have to hire a quality coach. I don't know if they're going to make this bold $12 million move. I think Mayhew's probably the more likely firing at this point, especially if this continues to go.
More likely than Lombardi.
Lombardi might not make it through the season.
Yeah.
And Kyle and I were talking about this a little bit before we started, but by week 8, I think that's where you see a lot of changes. If this team is 1-7, 0-8 at the bye, just looking for some kind of spark shakeup, that might be where you see Lombardi go.
Well, I think at some point they need to save some kind of phase or still some kind of hope that the Lions aren't just taking this passively and that they'll do something to fix what's going on. Because what I saw at Ford Field today was a toxic atmosphere for an NFL team. You had, first of all, they were booed, I believe, 6 or 7 times in the first half, including being totally showered by boos as they went into the tunnel at halftime. Then the second half, Ellington rips off a 63-yard touchdown run for the Cardinals. And Ford Field cheers. There were cheers at Ford Field. Matthew Stafford comes out and Dan Orlovsky just touches the field and puts on his helmet, and there's cheers. And then the PA announces Orlovsky to the crowd, and there are loud cheers. Like this, by the end of the game, there's like 5,000 fans. You see the paper bags are already out on the heads and everything. This season is already getting away from the Lions. It's becoming a laughing stock. Not just 0-5, it's becoming a laughing stock. And it's toxic, and they have to do something, I think, going forward to instill that, that they're going to do something, or otherwise they're going to be, I think, changes at very high in this organization.
It's difficult to believe this team won 11 games last year.
Yeah.
5 games of the season, it is off the rails. I mean, the big change obviously was the loss of Sue. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's bigger than that. I don't know if Ndamukong Suh's on this team, maybe they've got a couple wins, but still, it's not looking that great.
Well, the defense hasn't really been the issue. Outside of the first game where they got ripped by Rivers, they weren't
today.
No, but they also had 6 turnovers from the offense. Like they're not getting any help from the offense all year. That's the bigger issue.
Yeah, and it just. There's reminders of 2012 there for me, where Mayhew stood pat, like the roster he had, like the continuity he had. This year they replaced the small pieces, but it was more about protecting the compensatory picks, I thought. And they played way too conservatively with what they did in the offseason, and you stay the same, you're not getting better, you're getting worse, is the thing the players like to say, and that's proving true for the GM as well.
Well, on the Mayhew note, it was maybe fitting in some way that Kyle Van Noy was inactive for this game. It's the first healthy scratch of his career. He's now sat out 9 of his 21-22 games with the organization. I mean, that's looking more and more like a failed pick. You don't have a second rounder out there. Maybe they're just trying to clear his head and get him away from the game, but at this point it looks like he's not involved, he's not working his way into rotation. That's another failed pick at this point on Mayhew's card. You've got the Titus Young, Michael Shore, and Ryan Broyles. These things are adding up. Yeah, I think Mayhew's done some good things, particularly in recent years with free agent signings and at the top of the draft with Ansah. Another sack from Ansah today. He's among the league leaders, and he's done some good things. But there are holes in this roster because of what's happened and transpired in the draft, and we're seeing some major issues, particularly in the offensive line. I think that's shaping up to be maybe Mayhew's biggest miss of all. Reef, at this point, it looks bad. They didn't address the right tackle spot. Swanson's been okay at best. Tomlinson hasn't been good enough. Warford has barely been out there at all. They tried to piece together this high draft pick line outside of right tackle, and it's really fallen short of expectation. And I think that's the root of a lot of problems you see on the offense.
It's at the point right now. The Bears are coming here next week. The Bears are a bad football team as well. And I'm just not convinced the Lions are going to win that game either.
Ooh.
I know.
It takes a coming in hot.
It's so bad right now. I realize this is a good Cardinals football team. They've hung 40. I think this is the 4th time this season. But it's an emotional drain at 0-5. you know 5 games in, no team's ever made it to the postseason. Your season is over.
Yeah.
The Lions' season is over. They're playing for pride right now, and I didn't see a lot of pride out there. Did you see pride?
I saw a team that's quitting, and I don't think anyone really veered into that territory in the locker room to say that we quit. But body language was that way.
Yeah.
The effort was that way. You see guys going down early. I point the finger at Golden Tate, and I love him as a player, and he's also a very emotional player, which I think makes him great at what he does. But the flip side of that is that I thought he did not give 100% effort by the end of this game. His body language was not very good. I saw a team that by the end it was laughable what was going on out there.
On that last Stafford interception, I mean, just the collective air let out of that team. Like, nobody even chased the ball carrier. Like, I don't remember which player had the interception. Peterson?
No.
Maybe?
It was Peterson.
Okay, yeah, stepped in front of Calvin, running down the sideline. Stafford looked like he didn't want to chase him. Calvin Johnson didn't want to chase him. I mean, it was like that moment was the moment where everybody just quit. And they were already really far down at that point. But that was, end of the night.
I asked Jim Caldwell after the game about the Ford Field crowd actually cheering for a Cardinals 63-yard touchdown run, and he said, we deserve it. We deserve it. And that's maybe the truest thing the Lions said after the game. They deserve any kind of adversity or any kind of criticism that comes their way, because this is simply a terrible football team, and they have to regroup. So I think a loss to a bad Bears team next week could really make this thing really go off the rails.
I'm just saying.
I think we've said go off the rails about 5 times this video between the two of us. But that's where we are.
Yeah, I mean, the worst part about this is now we got to start talking draft.
Oh, man.
I know.
On that note, for Justin Rogers, I'm Kyle Meinke. We are at Live. Keep it right here.